Look at a pristine 18-hole golf course from above, and you see what looks like an immaculate slice of nature curated for an exclusive sport. Rolling green hills, strategically placed sand traps, quiet ponds, and wide open space. You probably assume that a golf course is fundamentally a sports venue, a business that exists to sell tee times, collect annual club dues, and rent out golf carts to people who love the game. That sounds logical, but the reality is that the vast majority of golf courses are bad, money-losing businesses if judged solely by the sport played on them. Understanding why they get built anyway reveals something much bigger about land development, financial engineering, and the massive hidden systems governing where and how we live. To understand why a golf course exists, you have to look past the grass and look at the perimeter. The real product being sold on a golf course isn't golf. The real product is the dirt touching the grass. During the golf course construction boom of the 1990s and early 2000s, hundreds of courses were built every year in North America alone. Yet player participation during that exact same window was largely stagnant. If you were a sports analyst looking at supply and demand, the math looked completely insane. Why spend $15 million constructing an 18-hole course when the pool of active golfers isn't growing? Because the people spending that $15 million weren't sports operators. They were residential real estate developers. A master-planned residential developer buys a massive tract of cheap, undeveloped land, often marshland, dry scrub, or remote agricultural acreage far from the city centre. On its own, an acre of raw, landlocked dirt in the middle of nowhere might sell for a modest sum. But if you carve out 150 acres in the centre of that property, turn it into an ultra-manicured green landscape, and wrap 500 home lots directly around its edges, the economics transform instantly. Suddenly, you aren't selling standard suburban lots. You are selling golf course views. That single distinction allows a developer to slap a 20% to 50% premium on every single home lot surrounding the greens. The golf course is literally designed as a financial loss leader. The developer doesn't care if the course itself barely breaks even on greens fees for its first decade, because the course has already paid for itself 5 times over in the markup on the surrounding real estate. When you realize this, the entire physical layout of a modern golf course suddenly makes sense. Traditional, historic golf courses built in the early 20th century were designed to be walked. The holes were grouped tightly together, looping seamlessly from the first tee back to the 18th clubhouse. But modern residential golf courses are notoriously terrible to walk. Holes are stretched out over massive distances, connected by long, winding paved paths. Why? Because a tightly packed, walkable course reduces the amount of perimeter real estate. Developers stretched courses out over hundreds of acres precisely to create as many golf frontage lots as physically possible. The layout of the game was altered to maximize linear feet of real estate sales. But turning cheap, unusable land into a playable residential golf course requires an immense amount of hidden physical engineering that the average player never notices. Underneath that vibrant green turf lies a high-pressure, highly complex civil engineering system. Before a single blade of grass is planted, millions of tons of earth are moved. Natural drainage patterns are completely rewritten. Developers sculpt vast artificial retention basins, the scenic ponds you see on the 4th and 14th holes. Not for aesthetics, but because local building codes require them to capture and contain millions of gallons of suburban stormwater runoff created by the hundreds of new roofs and paved roads surrounding the course. Once the land is shaped, the turf itself becomes a massive biological machine. A typical 18-hole course requires anywhere from 100,000 to over 1 million gallons of water per day to stay alive, depending on the climate. To feed that appetite, underground irrigation networks feature tens of miles of pipe, hundreds of automated valves, and complex computer systems that read soil moisture levels in real time. Then comes the chemical regime. To keep non-native, highly sensitive grass varieties like Bermuda or bent grass looking like a carpet, greenskeepers apply precisely calibrated doses of nitrogen, phosphorus, fungicides, herbicides, and insecticides. This brings us to a major counterintuitive insight. A golf course is not a green space in the ecological sense. It is a highly manufactured, resource-intensive industrial asset disguised as a park. It is a fragile ecosystem held together only by constant human intervention, massive energy expenditure, and endless capital. And that fragility is where the long-term risk begins. When a residential golf community is fully built out, a subtle structural transition takes place, one that sets up a ticking financial clock. The developer, having sold off all the expensive residential lots and made their vast profit, eventually exits the project. They hand the ownership and operation of the golf course over to either an independent operating company, a management firm, or the Homeowners Association itself. And that is where the economic model begins to crack. Without the high-margin real estate sales subsidizing the course, the facility must now survive purely on its operational revenues. Memberships, daily green fees, food and beverages. But maintain a modern 18-hole course to high standards can cost anywhere from $1.5 million to well over $3 million every single year in labor, water, chemicals, equipment, and energy. If player traffic drops, or if local demographics shift away from golf, the operator faces an impossible choice. They can raise membership dues, which risks driving away the remaining players. Or they can start cutting operational costs. When a course starts cutting its budget, a destructive chain reaction is triggered. It starts invisibly. The operator cuts back on specialized fertilizers and hand watering. To save on water utility costs or pumping permits, they reduce irrigation hours. Within weeks, the hypersensitive greens begin to deteriorate. Weeds invade the fairways. Sand traps compact into hard clay because there isn't enough staff to rake and drain them daily. To a casual observer, a slightly brown fairway might just look like an aesthetic annoyance. But to a residential community built around that course, it is a financial disaster. Remember, the surrounding homes derived a massive portion of their market value from the pristine view of that fairway. As the course degrades, the property values of the surrounding houses begin to slide. Lower property values lead to lower tax assessments and less invested homeowners. If the course operator eventually goes bankrupt and shuts down the operations completely, the outcome isn't just an empty field. It is the birth of a golf ghost town. An abandoned golf course does not neatly revert into a pleasant public forest. Without constant maintenance and active pumping systems, the complex drainage networks fail. Artificial ponds become stagnant, mosquito breeding swamps. Invasive weeds and scrub growth surge through the turf. The pristine view that homeowners paid a $100,000 premium for suddenly turns into an overgrown, unmanaged eyesore that slashes their property value overnight. And because of strict municipal zoning laws, turning that dead golf course into something else is an absolute nightmare. When the original development was approved, the golf course was zoned specifically as recreational open space. That open space was a legal requirement for the city to approve the density of the surrounding neighborhood. If a new buyer acquires the bankrupt golf course and tries to pave it over to build standard housing or commercial stores, the surrounding homeowners revolt. They sue the developer, arguing that they bought their homes under the guarantee of permanent open space. The result is a legal and economic stalemate. The land is too expensive to maintain as a golf course, but legally impossible to redevelop into anything else. To see this exact chain reaction play out in the real world, you only have to look at Florida following the 2008 housing collapse. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, Florida became the epicenter of the real estate golf boom. Developers carved hundreds of golf communities out of wetlands and farmland across counties like Palm Beach, Street, Lucy, and Lee. Homes were snapped up by buyers and spec investors eager to own a piece of the sunny golf lifestyle. When the subprime mortgage crisis hit in 2008, the real estate market collapsed. Speculators defaulted on their mortgages, leaving hundreds of homes surrounding these golf courses vacant. As membership rolls plummeted, course operators went under by the dozen. In communities across the state, operators literally turned off the water valves and locked the gates. Within months, multi-million-dollar golf courses dissolved into chaotic wilderness. Fairways grew waist-high in brush. Ponds overflowed, flooding backyards during heavy rains because the mechanical drainage pumps were no longer powered. Homeowners, who had invested their life savings into luxury golf properties, found themselves trapped in homes they couldn't sell, overlooking abandoned, rotting landscapes. In many cases, it took over a decade of brutal legal battles, municipal interventions, and heavy financial losses to rezone or repurpose these lands into public parks, solar farms, or high-density housing. The lessons of that collapse forced the industry to evolve, but the fundamental reality of the golf course remains unchanged. Today, developers and cities are approaching the format differently. We see the rise of shorter 9-hole concepts, non-traditional golf venues, and eco-certified courses that utilize drought-tolerant grasses and recycled wastewater to insulate themselves against rising resource costs. Yet, beneath every manicured fairway, the core trade-off endures. A golf course is rarely just a patch of grass for playing a game. It is a complex, capital-intensive engineering system designed to manufacture environmental prestige out of raw dirt. When the economic engine behind that system is real estate development, the grass stays green as long as the property values rise. But when the money stops flowing, nature reclaims the investment far faster than the financial system can keep up.